Hey folks, AJ here, and today we'll be delving into the integral realm of comic book villains, focusing on the concept of evil itself. Our spotlight, none other than Magneto, the master of magnetism, and the perpetual antagonist in almost every X-Men story, outside of humanity itself, of course. But hold on to your seats, because we're not just here to analyze him, we're here to dive into the complexities of what it means to be evil, especially in the comic book medium. Magneto's legacy spans decades, his character evolving in tandem with the shifting societal norms. Originally, when Stan Lee created him, along with Jack Kirby, they originally had the first villains be humanity themselves, who created the Sentinels, which makes sense. I mean, X-Men are meant to be fighting against societal pressures, and this is coming out during the 1960s, where tensions behind similar groups are already clashing. It wasn't until a few chapters later, a few issues of the comic books, and eventually we get Magneto. This is a very different idea of who Magneto is, especially because he was, if you ask me, just meant to be a villain of the week. He wasn't meant to be the true antagonist for all X-Men to come, like we've seen in the movies, TV shows, and video games. No, instead, what we see here is a villain, quite simply. Yeah, he believes in mutant superiority, but besides that, he's actually pretty different from how most of us imagine him today. It wasn't until the big twist around Magneto hit that people really started to sympathize with him, see what he saw, and as his origins as a Holocaust survivor, which has imbued itself in his psyche and has given him a profound sense of persecution and fear, his experiences most of us scarcely can fathom. His mistrust for humanity, and especially his hatred, was born from what he personally lost. Seeing your parents taken away from you at such a young age by an event like that, obviously we could that happen. As he became a more sympathetic character in the eyes of many authors for comic books didn't see him that way. Most wanted him to just be this villainous figure. For example, many people who read the comics may be aware of New X-Men Annual 2001, where Grant Morrison created Zorn, who is this new mutant who we find imprisoned in China. He joins X-Men for a bit, and it's pretty cool. We enjoy what he's doing here. It wasn't until later where we really got to see that this was Magneto. If you're liking the video, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps a ton. And here's actually a quote from Grant Morrison on Magneto, his actual views on the subject. What people often forget, of course, is that Magneto, unlike the lovely Sir Ian McKellen, is a mad old terrorist twat. No matter how he justifies his stupid, brutal behavior, or how anyone else tries to justify it, in the end, he's just an old bastard. While I can agree with this, I think everyone can agree that mass genocide is typically not a good thing. We have to remember that Magneto is deeper than just this villain that he's portrayed in here. Yeah, he does bad things, but he does it for a greater good and ultimately for a valid reason, especially as we can see in many other forms of X-Men media, such as 97, where he watched those he protected get eviscerated in front of him simply because he let his guard down and tried to take a kinder path to dealing with humanity. But this isn't the first time that Marvel has tried to paint Magneto in a more evil light than what many comic book readers would deem just. In fact, Marvel has made numerous attempts to paint Magneto as a endearingly evil, yet each endeavor just seems to fall short. It's because he doesn't really fall into a simplistic villainous archetype that many other Marvel villains can kind of fall into pretty soundly. One attempt to try and make him seem super villainous was when Magneto forcefully removed that adamantium within Wolverine's skeleton. A move that it was intended to demonstrate the depths of his cruelty, his malice, whatever you want to say. However, this act, while undeniably brutal, I mean, look at the panel, it had failed to have the desired impact for several reasons, chief among them being Wolverine's extraordinary regenerative abilities. That meant despite the excruciating pain this offered him, it was brief and he can't realistically be too affected by it. It also gave us Logan's Bone Claw meta, which was a pretty cool era, I have to say. I mean, who doesn't like bone claws? That's like the one thing that got right about in X-Men Origins Wolverine. Also Days of Futures Past. Another notable example is Magneto's portrayal in the Ultimate Universe. For those of you who don't know, the Ultimate Universe is where you get Miles Morales as Spider-Man prior to him joining the main Marvel timeline. It's also gave us Ultimate Goblin, all that good stuff. But in this rendition of the character, Magneto's backstory was radically altered. That made him less of a complex character and more of just, again, an evil person. He didn't have the same backstory where he had to go through these atrocities. He just was kind of like this after being friends with Charles. It's kind of a weird take on the character, and a lot of people, including myself, kind of just dismissed this as something we weren't a big fan of, since it effectively tried to make Magneto a villain by taking away what made him Magneto. It simply should have just been a different character at that point. In both instances, Marvel's attempts to solidify Magneto's status as a purely evil antagonist were dwarfed by the character's inherent complexities and nuances of his portrayal, you know? Now, does this excuse his deeds? Absolutely not. I personally do not want an asteroid to come at terminal velocity down on Earth to wipe us all out. That does not sound very cool if you ask me. But what I will say is that Magneto emphasizes the anti-villain archetype, driven not by inherent wickedness, but a belief in survival and the prosperity of his own kind. Even if his methods are morally, let's say, gray. But let's consider other characters like Poison Ivy. Yeah, she's not from Marvel, but I think she's a good example. Poison Ivy debuted in June of 1966, where she was a villain to Batman. Not much more to her. She had cool powers. She was evil. She was clearly meant to be more of a joke on the environment, like environmentalists, which wasn't taken too terribly seriously because she was a femme fatale with a genius intellect who was a brilliant botanist, and at this time, the environment was not a huge issue in the eyes of the populace. Yeah, there were some people who were like, hey, we should worry about future generations, but in the 60s, who really cared? That was barely a big thing. I mean, Captain Planet wasn't around yet. That's how you know it didn't matter much. So when she was made mostly as a joke. It wasn't until environmental concerns gained prominence that her ideology started to gain sympathy and support. The distinction between hero and villain blurred. Is it any different with someone like Magneto? He wages a crusade for mutant rights in a world rife with fear and bigotry. Poison Ivy also gained more depth, especially in the animated space. If we look to Batman the Animated Series, where she helps Harley Quinn deal with her abusive relationship with the Joker, we see that she has more to her than just being evil for the sake of being evil. We just talked about how Poison Ivy and Magneto are villains. They still do bad things, but they ultimately have the right goals in mind. Goals that in our world we could see them as being heroic. In fact, in X-Men 97, which was the main inspiration for wanting to create this video, we can actually see that Magneto was the one with his head screwed on right here, if you ask me. Many people, including myself, have seen that Magneto's actions here were the right ones. The X-Men ultimately went off the deep end. Even Bastion, one of the main villains of the show, have actually been out like, are you guys crazy? There's multiple times where we see X-Men who have left the planet come back and be like, oh no, this is not the right way, Magneto. We must change our ways. When in reality, Magneto is the only one taking the situation seriously. He watched so many people get hurt. He watched an entire group of people he was supposed to protect get decimated. He tried to talk with people, tried to be better, and all that showed was that there was weakness in him that they exploited and used to attack. Even when allies of mutant kind tried to support and try to support them, tried to help, they ended up not doing anything. If it was not for everything going on there and Magneto's own abilities, the X-Men honestly might have just died right then and there. And for what? Because they wanted to help people. So I think that there kind of proves that sometimes there is a line between being good and evil, but sometimes you have to step over that line if you want to actually protect those you care about. Additionally, in X-Men 97, the narrative arc echoes real-life parallels, where marginalized groups continue to face discrimination and persecution based off fear and ignorance. Magneto, with his unyielding commitment to protection and empowerment of mutants, emerges as a tragic figure whose radicalism is fueled by a deep-seated sense of injustice. In this light, many viewers find themselves sympathizing with Magneto's cause, recognizing the validity of his concerns and the injustices he seeks to address. His actions, however extreme, are contextualized within a broader struggle for equality and dignity, themes that resonate deeply with audiences who are also grappling with their own experiences of marginalization and oppression. Yet, even as Magneto's perspective gains traction, the more ambiguity of his character remains a point of contention. There are many people out there in the world who can watch the X-Men shows, but the second they feel as if the X-Men are getting political, will immediately back off and say, that's not my X-Men, when the X-Men inherently have always been political. There are many people who see Magneto's actions as just being a villain, but don't take the time to see what really makes him that way. The term villain has lost its original meaning. There are many times at this point where being just evil is not cutting it anymore. Because Magneto is not standing alone, straddling the line between good and evil. Across the Marvel Universe, numerous villains have similarly defied traditional categorization, blurring the boundary between light and dark. Characters like Loki, the god of mischief, Black Widow, the former Soviet assassin turned Avenger, the Scarlet Witch, former Brotherhood of Evil Mutants member, turned Avenger, turned dimensional terrorist. They all have their own reasons for being who they are. Even someone like Bucky Barnes, who many will know as the Winter Soldier, has been fighting to show that he is a better person when he is not being literally brainwashed. So what do you guys think? Is Magneto truly evil, or is there more to his story? Join the conversation in the comments down below, and don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and produce more thought-provoking explorations into the world of comics and media in general. Thanks for watching the World Building Corner. This has been AJ. Make sure to keep it easy, take it safe, and of course, it's time for me to head out. AJ out.